The galaxy was vast, filled with countless stars and worlds, but even across that endless space, a cry for help could still be heard. On the far edge of known space, a small colony burned. Enemy warships surrounded it like wolves around a helpless village. Their cannons fired without mercy, and flames spread across the surface of the planet. Families hid in ruined shelters, praying for safety that would not come. Soldiers who had once sworn to defend the colony now lay scattered, their fleets destroyed in the first wave of the invasion. The survivors had only one hope left. In the deepest bunker under mountains of broken stone, a signal was prepared. A desperate SOS, a last scream into the void. The people of the colony had little faith it would matter. Who would come? Who could stand against the invaders' fleet of hundreds of warships? Still, they pressed the button. Still, they sent the message. Because when death closes in, even a whisper of hope is worth holding. The signal left the planet, a faint pulse of light against the black ocean of space. It carried across systems, across nebulae, across lonely stars. It was not a call of pride nor of strength, it was a cry of fear. But the cry was clear, and it was aimed at one place: Earth. The invaders laughed when they detected it. On the bridge of their flagship, the alien commander sneered, his voice sharp and mocking. They call for help? His officers laughed with him. Who will save them? No one, certainly not the humans. In their arrogance, the invaders believed they already ruled the galaxy. Humanity to them was nothing but a young race, too weak, too fragile, too late to the stars. But the signal reached Earth. Deep beneath the oceans, inside hidden bases carved into mountains, across vast orbital stations circling the moon, alarms rang. Screens lit up with red warnings. Commanders stared at the incoming data, reading the message again and again. It was not from Earth. It was not even from human colonies. It was from a distant world that had placed its last hope in them. The message was simple: help us. Please. On Earth, silence filled the command chamber. Generals, admirals, and strategists looked at each other, and in their eyes there was no hesitation. Humanity had seen the Empire's cruelty before. They had seen entire civilizations erased. And though Earth had been mocked, though humanity had been underestimated, they had not been idle. For years they had prepared in silence. They had built war fleets in hidden shipyards. They had forged weapons that no alien had ever witnessed. They had trained their soldiers not just for defense, but for war. Now the time had come to use them. Orders spread across Earth. Massive hangar doors opened. Engines roared to life. Titans of steel rose from hidden bases glowing with power. In orbit, ships assembled into formations, dreadnoughts and carriers lining up with destroyers and frigates, their hulls shining with strange blue markings. The fleets gathered, their engines pulsing with a fury that had been waiting for release. On the burning colony, the survivors waited in silence. Hours passed. The sky above them still burned red with enemy fire. Children cried in the dark, their parents whispering empty promises of safety. In the bunkers, soldiers tightened their weapons, though they knew they were useless. The SOS had been sent, but hope faded with every passing minute. And then, the sky changed. The survivors felt it first. A deep vibration shook the ground, as if the air itself carried the sound of thunder. Then, the heavens flashed. Out of faster-than-light travel, they appeared. Not one ship, not 10, dozens, hundreds. A human fleet filled the orbit of the colony, their engines glowing blue, their hulls shining like stars. The invaders froze. Their laughter died. Their pride cracked. For the first time, they felt something they had never felt before: uncertainty. The survivors on the ground erupted into cries of disbelief. "They came," one whispered. "The humans came." Children pointed at the glowing ships above, their eyes wide with awe. Elders fell to their knees, tears streaming down their faces. Soldiers who had already given up clenched their fists again, hope flooding back into their broken hearts. Above the burning world, the two fleets faced each other. The invaders with their black warships, arrogant and cruel. The humans with their blue light, silent and steady. The invaders had numbers, but humanity had something else. They had fury. The enemy fleet stretched across the skies like a wall of firepower. Hundreds of black warships stood ready, their engines glowing red, their weapons already armed. To the survivors on the colony below, it looked hopeless. Even with the arrival of the human fleet, the numbers were clear. The aliens outnumbered them 3-1. The survivors prayed the humans were more than they appeared, because if not, this day would end in fire. But on the alien flagship, fear did not exist. Not yet. The commander sat tall on his throne, his eyes fixed on the glowing blue ships across the void. His scales reflected the crimson lights of the bridge, his jaw tight, his pride unshaken. He raised his claw and pointed toward the humans. There they are, he said coldly. One world's fleet standing against the Empire, fools. His officers laughed, their voices sharp and cruel. One sneered, do they not know who we are? Another leaned over his console and shook his head. Perhaps they believe pity will save them. Perhaps they expect us to show mercy. The laughter grew, echoing through the flagship like thunder. Messages spread across the armada, captains speaking with arrogance. Humans dare to face us? Let them. We will burn their fleet as we burned their colonies. This will be another easy victory. Their voices carried through their crews, filling soldiers with false confidence. Pride was the Empire's greatest weapon, and it blinded them to danger, but not all were blind. On a smaller destroyer, a young officer studied his scanners. His claws shook as he spoke softly. Commander, their energy readings, they are unstable. I cannot make sense of them. The levels rise and fall like a storm. I do not think these are ordinary ships. His captain silenced him with a glare. Do not disgrace yourself, they are only humans. We have crushed stronger enemies. We will crush them too. The officer looked back at his screen, his heart heavy. He wanted to believe his captain, but deep inside, fear whispered that something was wrong. Across the fleet, the invaders tightened their formation. Rows of cruisers moved into place, destroyers filled the gaps, battleships advanced slowly, their massive cannons glowing with power. The Empire's doctrine was simple. Overwhelm, crush, erase. No one had ever stood against them. No one ever could. Or so they believed. The human fleet remained still, silent, watching. Not a single ship broke formation. Not a single cannon fired. They simply waited, their blue lights glowing brighter with every passing moment. To the invaders, this calmness was weakness. They are frozen in fear, one captain said with a grin. They know they are already defeated. Others agreed, their voices filled with scorn. The idea that the humans might be dangerous never crossed their minds. On the colony below, the survivors held their breath. The sky was split between two armies, the red glow of the Empire and the blue light of Earth. It was a standoff unlike anything they had seen. Mothers clutched their children, soldiers gripped their weapons, and leaders whispered prayers. The tension was so heavy it felt as if the world itself would break. Finally, the Empire commander raised his hand. End this, he ordered. Across the fleet, weapons came alive. Plasma cannons hummed, their barrels glowing hot. Torpedoes slid into launch bays, engines primed for release. The heavens filled with the light of deadly power, all aimed at the human ships. But even now the humans did not move. The alien crews laughed again, their fear buried under arrogance. They are frozen. They are finished. Their commanders smirked. When the fire clears, nothing will remain. The order was given. Fire! The void erupted. Hundreds of beams streaked across space, a storm of red plasma and glowing torpedoes cutting toward the human fleet. The survivors below gasped, their hearts breaking. The sky itself burned brighter than day, as if the stars had fallen all at once. And in that fire, the human ships vanished from sight. The alien commander leaned back, satisfied. It is done, he said coldly. His bridge filled with cheers, officers smiling, soldiers clapping claws against steel. They believed victory had already come. But deep inside, Cracks had already formed. Some captains stared at their screens too long, waiting for confirmation. Some soldiers frowned as they saw strange fluctuations on their sensors, and the young officer on the destroyer whispered words his crew refused to hear. "It is not destroyed. It is waiting." And as the firestorm began to fade, as the burning light cleared, the Empire was about to see the truth. The storm of plasma and torpedoes filled the heavens. For long moments the void was nothing but fire and chaos. On the alien flagship, cheers echoed. Soldiers clapped their claws, officers smiled with arrogance, and the commander leaned forward with cruel pride. "So ends the foolishness of humans," he said. "So ends their hope." But when the fire began to fade, something unexpected remained. The human fleet was still there, not broken, not scattered, not even scratched. Their shields glowed with waves of blue light, rippling softly like water disturbed by pebbles. The ships floated calmly in perfect formation, engines burning steady, their hulls shining brighter than before. The cheering died instantly. On the alien bridges, silence fell like a hammer. Officers froze at their consoles, staring at screens that told them the impossible. Soldiers whispered to one another in disbelief. Captains shouted for confirmation, their voices cracking as reports came back the same. The humans had taken everything the Empire threw at them and had not fallen. On the flagship, the commander's mouth hung open. His claws dug into the armrests of his throne. "No, this cannot be," he whispered. His pride tried to resist the truth, but the sight was undeniable. And then, humanity answered. The lead dreadnought shifted, its massive frame turning slowly until its cannon faced the nearest alien cruiser. The strange blue veins across its hull pulsed with light, energy surging through its core. A deep hum filled the void, growing louder, sharper, until even the survivors on the colony below felt it in their bones. The cannon fired. A single beam of energy tore through the darkness, brighter than a star. Faster than any eye could follow, it struck the cruiser square in the middle. For a breath, the ship remained whole. Then, with a soundless flash, it split apart. Its armor peeled away, its core detonated, and in seconds the mighty warship was nothing but drifting wreckage. Gasps erupted across the battlefield. The human fleet fired again. Another beam. Another cruiser shattered. A third blast followed, this time cutting through a battleship that had survived centuries of war. The mighty vessel, once the pride of the Empire, exploded in silence, consumed in blue fire. On the colony surface, survivors fell to their knees. They had expected destruction. Instead, they saw salvation. Tears filled their eyes as they pointed to the sky, shouting through their sobs. "They live. The humans live." Children clapped. Their hands, old men covered their mouths, and soldiers who had already accepted death now shouted with hope. But hope was not what the Empire felt. Panic spread like fire through their fleet. Crews shouted in terror, their voices trembling. "Their weapons ignore our shields. Our armor cannot hold. They are cutting us down," captains screamed. Orders, demanding formations, demanding more fire. But none of it mattered. The human fleet was moving. Destroyers darted forward, their cannons tearing through smaller vessels with precise strikes. Carriers unleashed squadrons of fighters, sleek ships that swarmed like angry hornets, cutting apart enemy interceptors before they could react. And the dreadnoughts, giant titans of steel, moved with terrifying calm, each shot splitting another warship in half. The alien commander slammed his claw against his console, rage mixing with fear. "Form the shield wall! Trap them! Overwhelm them!" But his voice no longer carried strength. His officers exchanged nervous glances, their confidence gone. On a nearby destroyer, the young officer who had warned of strange readings whispered again, "I told you." It was waiting. His crewmates no longer laughed at him. They only stared at the glowing human vessels, their faces pale with fear. The survivors on the colony could hardly believe what they saw. The once invincible alien fleet, an armada that had erased entire civilizations, was being torn apart by humanity. They cried out in joy, shouting to one another, holding their families close. For the first time, they felt something stronger than fear. They felt pride. The battle had shifted. What had begun as an invasion was turning into a massacre. The aliens had advanced without fear, but now fear was all they knew. Their formations broke, their voices cracked, and their ships burned one by one under the fury of Earth's fleet. Above the burning world, the truth was clear to all who watched. The humans had not come as saviors. They had come as predators. The Empire's armada trembled. Their cheers had turned to silence. Their pride had turned to fear. Yet even in fear, they clung to numbers. Hundreds of warships still stretched across the void. Their commander refused to admit defeat. His voice thundered across the channels, desperate but fierce. Form the wall. Surround them. We are still the Empire. We will not fall to one world's fleet. Obedient captains shouted back, forcing their ships into new positions. Cruisers lined up in tight rows. Destroyers filled the gaps. Battleships loomed behind them with cannons glowing. The Empire had always trusted in numbers, in formation, in overwhelming fire. If the humans could destroy a handful of ships, then the Empire would drown them in thousands of blasts. On the colony surface, the survivors saw the alien armada shift into a massive wall of steel. Their hearts sank. Even with the human fleet's strange power, how could they face such numbers? Mothers whispered prayers. Soldiers clenched their weapons tighter. Hope flickered, but fear clawed at it. The humans did not move. Their ships stayed in perfect formation, glowing blue, engines steady. No words, no signals, no threats. Only silence. The alien commander bared his teeth. Fire! The void erupted. Hundreds of plasma beams, missiles, and torpedoes filled the sky. The Empire's full fury crashed against the humans, turning the heavens into fire. From the surface below, it looked as if the stars themselves were exploding. The survivors cried out, some dropping to the ground in despair. But the human fleet endured. The blue shields rippled, wave after wave of light bending, absorbing, consuming the storm. Not a single human ship fell. Not one. And then humanity struck back. The lead dreadnought fired a beam that pierced through 3 enemy cruisers in a single shot, slicing them apart like glass. Destroyers unleashed precise salvos that cracked enemy flanks. Carriers launched wave after wave of fighters that darted through the chaos like shadows with wings, striking engines, cutting weapons, leaving fire in their wake. The Empire's wall collapsed instantly. On the flagship, panic spread. Officers screamed at their consoles. Shields failing. Weapons offline. We cannot hold. The commander roared for silence, but his claws trembled on the armrests. His eyes, once filled with arrogance, now flickered with fear. Across the battlefield, captains shouted conflicting orders. Some tried to push forward, others tried to pull back. Unity broke. Formations fell apart. Ships drifted out of position, leaving holes the humans exploited with ruthless precision. The human fleet pressed forward. They did not fight with chaos. They fought with discipline, each ship striking in perfect rhythm. Destroyers cut through weak points. Dreadnoughts tore open the enemy's core. Carriers flooded the field with fighters that hunted down stragglers. Every strike was deliberate, merciless, unstoppable. On the ground, the survivors screamed with joy. They no longer saw death in the skies. They saw vengeance. Children pointed at the explosions, shouting the names of ships they had feared for years, now burning in silence. Soldiers who had nearly surrendered now lifted their heads high, shouting as if their own voices joined the battle. The Empire's confidence was gone. On one cruiser, a captain stared at the glowing human fleet and whispered, "This is not war. This is punishment." His crew nodded, their faces pale, their claws shaking. For the first time in their lives, they felt what their enemies had always felt: helplessness. The human fleet gave no mercy. Their weapons tore through ships like paper. Their fighters hunted down escape pods, leaving no chance for regrouping. Their dreadnoughts cut apart battleships with beams so bright that stars dimmed beside them. The battlefield, once the pride of the Empire, became a graveyard of steel. The alien commander's voice cracked as he shouted his last order. "Retreat! Save what you can!" but his words were swallowed by screams of panic. Ships fled in every direction, colliding with each other in desperation. Some jumped into hyperspace without coordination, crashing into allies as they vanished. The Empire's unity was gone. The human fleet advanced calmly through the chaos. Their silence was more terrifying than thunder. They did not chase wildly. They chose targets carefully, striking until nothing remained. The survivors on the colony wept openly now. They were not only saved, they were witnesses to history. The Empire, the terror of the stars, was being broken by the fury of Earth. And in the glow of blue light across the heavens, one truth became clear. This was no rescue. This was judgment. The Empire had always believed in fear. For centuries, it had been their greatest weapon. They crushed worlds not only with firepower, but with reputation. Entire civilizations had surrendered without a fight because they believed resistance was hopeless. And yet now, in the cold void above the burning colony, fear had turned against them. Because the humans were no longer defending, they were attacking. The human fleet surged forward, no longer waiting, no longer holding formation at a distance. Their dreadnoughts advanced like mountains of steel, their cannons glowing bright blue. Carriers unleashed endless waves of fighters that darted across the chaos like starlight made sharp. Destroyers slipped through cracks in the broken Empire lines, their guns striking precise and merciless blows. It was not just battle anymore. It was fury. The first to fall were the retreating ships. Human fighters hunted them down like predators, tearing engines apart before they could escape. Explosions lit the darkness, each one echoing across the void like thunder. On the surface of the colony, survivors gasped, their tears mixing with laughter. "They cannot run," one soldier whispered. "Earth does not let them run. You." Empire's commander slammed his claws against his throne. "Fight! Fight, you cowards! You are the Empire!" But his words had no weight. His fleet no longer listened. His captains shouted over each other in panic, their crews trembling as, one by one, their ships burned. A dreadnought fired, its cannon humming with power. The beam that erupted from its core split an alien battleship clean in two. The halves drifted apart slowly, fires spilling from its cracked hull, before the entire ship detonated in silence. The shockwave shook nearby cruisers, their shields collapsing as human destroyers swept in to finish them. The fury spread like wildfire. Carriers unleashed drones and bombers in waves, filling the battlefield with blue trails of fire. They darted into the heart of enemy groups, planting torpedoes deep into their engines. Cruisers that had once been proud symbols of conquest now burst apart in blossoms of flame. The alien soldiers could not understand it. Their pride shattered with every strike. Their voices filled the comms, shaking with disbelief. How can they fight like this? Their weapons, they are endless. We cannot win. We cannot win. On the colony below, the survivors clung to each other, eyes wide as they watched the sky turn into fire. For the first time in their lives, they did not fear the storm above them. It was not their destruction they saw. It was their salvation. The humans fought with a fury that made the survivors weep. They realized this was not just a rescue mission. It was vengeance, unleashed in full. The Empire had mocked Earth. They had called humanity weak, fragile, nothing but latecomers to the stars. But now the truth was written in wreckage across the heavens. Earth had hidden its strength, forged it in silence, and now revealed it like a blade pulled from the shadows. The human fleet pressed forward, cutting deeper into the enemy lines. Every shot was deliberate, every strike merciless. They fought not as if they were outnumbered, but as if they had already won. The Empire's ships scattered, colliding, fleeing, falling apart. There was no order left, no unity, only chaos. On. "Run, alien cruiser." A captain sat frozen, his eyes locked on the glowing dreadnought that loomed before him. His crew shouted for orders, but he had none. His voice broke as he whispered, "We are not the masters. They are." Seconds later, his ship vanished in a beam of blue fire. The survivors on the colony erupted in cheers. Children raised their fists to the sky, shouting the names of Earth, of humanity. Elders wept with joy, whispering prayers of gratitude. Soldiers pounded their chests, their voices trembling as they shouted, "We are not alone, we are not alone anymore." The fury of Earth had become their shield. The alien commander's chest heaved as he stared at the screens. His empire's pride lay shattered. His fleet was gone. He wanted to roar, to deny, to cling to pride. But all he felt was terror. For the first time, he saw humans not as prey, not as weaklings, but as predators with fire in their veins. The human fleet gathered, again, their ships glowing brighter than ever. The survivors below felt the ground tremble as the dreadnoughts prepared their final strike. Engines roared, cannons charged, and silence fell across the battlefield. In that silence, one truth remained. This was no mercy. This was no defense. This was Earth's fury. The void was filled with fire. For hours the heavens had shaken with war, but now only wreckage remained. Where once an empire's armada had stretched across the stars, there was nothing but broken steel and drifting shadows. Flames burned weakly in the silence, the last breath of ships that once carried thousands. In the middle of it all, the human fleet stood unbroken. Their ships glowed softly with blue light, their engines steady, their formation perfect. Not one vessel had fallen. They had answered the cry for help, and their answer had been fury. On the surface of the colony, survivors poured from their bunkers. They stared up at the sky, their mouths open, their eyes wide. Some wept, some laughed, some simply dropped to their knees in silence. For the first time since the invasion began, they were alive. For the first time in years, they felt hope. Child pointed at the glowing ships above and whispered, "They saved us." An old soldier beside her shook his head, tears running down his scarred face. "No," he said softly. "They avenged us." The story was already spreading. Across the galaxy, whispers traveled faster than light. Traders carried tales to distant ports. Fleeing enemy captains, their pride broken, spoke of what they had seen. And always the story was the same. The humans had come and the empire had fallen. On neutral worlds, leaders sat in silence, their hands trembling as they heard the reports. One fleet destroyed an entire armada? They asked. Impossible. But the wreckage told the truth. In the Empire's halls, doubt spread like poison. Soldiers who had once marched with pride now looked over their shoulders. Officers whispered in fear. The word human no longer brought laughter. It brought silence. Back on the battlefield, the last of the Empire's survivors fled into hyperspace, leaving their dead behind. The human fleet did not chase them. They did not need to. The message was already written in the stars. Inside the lead dreadnought, the commander stood tall. His eyes scanned the battlefield one final time, watching the wreckage drift, the fires fade, the silence return. His voice was calm, but every word carried weight. The signal was answered. The innocent are safe. Let the galaxy remember this day. The crew around him nodded. They did not cheer. They did not celebrate. Humanity's fury was not born from pride. It was born from necessity, from survival, from a promise that no cry for help would ever again be ignored. The fleet turned slowly, their engines burning brighter. Survivors on the colony raised their hands, shouting their thanks, begging them to stay. But the humans could not. There would be other signals, other cries, other battles. And so, one by one, the warships slipped back into the void, vanishing into faster-than-light travel, leaving only silence behind. The survivors stood in the ruins of their world, but their hearts were no longer broken. They knew now that they were not alone. Humanity had come when no one else would. Humanity had answered with fury when the galaxy had turned away. The phrase spread across every world touched by the story. They cried for help, and humanity answered with fury. It became a warning, a promise, and a legend, for the galaxy had learned a truth it would never forget. Humanity was no longer weak. Humanity was no longer prey. And when Earth rose in anger, no empire, no armada, no power in the stars could stand against it.